In part 8 of the 2022 Canes opponent preview series, we're going to preview the Virginia Cavaliers, our opponent up in Charlottesville, Virginia on October 29th. Well, nobody thought there would be a coaching change in Charlottesville after a 6-6 season. Between losing the regular season finale against Vatech and having their trip to Boston canceled for the Fenway Bowl due to COVID, Bronco Mendenhall said enough was enough, at least for the moment, from college football. He decided to walk away. But now you bring in Tony Elliott, who comes from Clemson, and he has to keep the ball going in Charlottesville. Think about it. Just 3 years ago, Bronco Mendenhall won the Coastal Division, only to lose to Elliott's Clemson Tigers in the championship game. Now, what Elliott inherits is a very explosive talent in the passing game offensively, but they don't have experience on the O-line. And let's be clear. They haven't had a true running game in any of the past 4 years up there. Now, defensively, they get 5 starters back, but they've given up big plays each of the past 2 years. Now, Now, Tony Elliott's coaching career as head coach starts September 3rd against Richmond. The same opponent that Mendenhall lost to last year, and it lost to in his Virginia debut. Now, this is in much better shape than the one Bronco took over in 2016. And the expectation that Tony Elliott, who has talked about building the model college football program, will be better equipped to hit the ground running. Let's look at their offense. You know they get Armstrong back. They get their top receivers back, Wicks, Keon Thompson, and Billy Kemp IV. Plus they get a 2020 breakout star in Lavelle Davis Jr., who missed all of last season with a torn ACL. And they're loaded at the skill positions, but the key will be that offensive line. That's been a major question mark that could put everything off track. They have to replace all 5 starters up front, and there are no candidates that could really stand out. They do have senior Derek Devine, who worked at tackle and guard back in the spring. He's the most experienced guy on their line. But they had to go into the portal to get a right tackle and Mac Hollensteiner from Georgetown and John Paul Flores from Dartmouth. However, Hollensteiner decided to return to D.C. in June, and adding more concerns in the trenches for Elliott. Now, he's talked extensively, Elliott has, about bringing more balance and developing that running game. But when Ronnie Walker Jr. got hurt in the spring, and when you add to that lack of experience and the depth up front, that's an issue. That's an issue for them. But again, it's going to have to be up to Armstrong. They have to do much with his legs that he does with his arm, which is probably, that arm is like a top 10 talent right there. When you look at their defense, they lose Mandy Alonso, linebacker Noah Taylor, Nick Grant, and Joey Blunt. They're gone. They're going to have multiple schemes on the new defensive coordinator, John Rosinski. So you look for 3- and 4-man fronts to be what they run. They used to have a 5 defensive back look in the spring. So in fact, they did use that in the spring. They have Nick Johnson back, who had 117 tackles. But the biggest question will be, where does that rush come from up front? Of the 19 sacks they had last year, 12 of them came from players who are no longer on the roster. They have a transfer from Georgia Tech and Chico Bennett Jr. He missed last season with a knee injury. And they have sophomore outside linebacker Mike Green, who are 2 of those players who can have an immediate impact in that area. On the back end of that defense, you have Louisville transfer Anthony Johnson back to lead a unit that allowed 21 pass plays of 30 yards or more. That is 5th most in the conference. Hell, that's an issue for them. When you look at their special teams, they asked a lot from Brandon Farrell last year. And remember, he opened last season without a job as a punter. but he became the place kicker and kickoffs most of the year. But now with Jacob Finn gone, look for Farrell to maybe become the guy there at punter. And they have a freshman kicker in Will Bettridge to look to challenge Farrell for extra points and field goal work. But Kemp's going to be their primary punt returner again. Him and Mike Collins split the kick return duties last year. But they want to get more pop from there. They want more explosiveness there. When you look at Virginia from the Coastal Division, many say it's open for the taking. Personally, I don't believe that. But when you look at Tony Elliott's first year, Virginia is maybe a few pieces away to take advantage of that. It's there, but they don't have the pieces. Now, while their passing game will be very good, and with Armstrong, Wicks, and Davis being the stars of that passing game, when you don't have much experience on the OL and no established running game and a defense that has a lot to prove that it won't get torched for big games, that might be too much to ask. When you look at that schedule, they go to after Richmond, they go to Illinois, and then Old Dominion and Coastal Carolina are very quality opponents, especially Coastal Carolina late in the year. I mean, that's at home, but that's a dangerous opponent before they have that Commonwealth Cup game against Virginia against Virginia Tech the following week. But look at that stretch from late October to mid-November. Look at that stretch. Yes, we come in October 29th. Then after us, North Carolina, Pitt, and Coastal come in before closing at Blacksburg against Virginia Tech. Now the good news the good news for Virginia is all those games I mentioned, us, Carolina, and Pitt, and Coastal Carolina are all at home. Especially us, Carolina, and Pitt back in 3 straight weeks. If they can protect Armstrong and cut down on the big plays, they could surprise some people. But if not, then it could be a replay of 2016 under Bronco when they went 2-10. But when I look at that schedule, I think Tony Elliott will surprise some people. I think they'll do well. I look at that schedule. I look at 3 L's right there, us, North Carolina, and Pitt. I think when you look at the schedule, I will say, looking at it, I'm going to say I think they can win 6. I think they can win 6 their first year. So I'm going to go with 6-6 in Tony Elliott's first season in Charlottesville. In part 9 of the 2022 Canes opponent preview series, I will preview the Florida State Seminoles.